We got any pot smokers in the fucking house tonight? That's what I fucking thought. Well, this next song is dedicated to all you motherfuckers out there that like to smoke that. This is how we're gonna do it. If you got a joint in your pocket, I suggest you pull it out, light it up, and pass it to a friend. This song's our brand new single off our new record. This song's called New Disease.
Nu metal is a genre that just doesn't get enough credit. Yeah, I said it. I know a lot of metal elitists are going to their keyboard and give me a long, emotional speech on how metalcore is so much better and nu metal ruined music for a decade. But I liked it. Bands like System of a Down, Korn's early work, Deftones, Cold Chamber's early work, they're all great bands in my opinion. Now of course there are some nu metal bands that are less than stellar, to say the least. But that doesn't make the whole genre complete shit. Every genre has its bad eggs. Now one could argue that nu metal has a lot of bad eggs, but that's beside the point. Spineshank is a great band that I got into from watching the movie Freddy vs. Jason. That entire movie has a fucking awesome soundtrack, and Beginning of the End by Spineshank is the first song you hear. I thought it sounded fucking awesome, so I decided to listen to some more. Spineshank has an amazing catalog, and today I'm going to be going in depth on their history. Whether you're a longtime fan or just now hearing about them, this should be interesting for any fan of metal. Spineshank first started out as a band called Basic Enigma. Now I did some digging and I couldn't find anything on this band. No demos, no live gigs, literally nothing. Maybe I just didn't look hard enough, but I couldn't find anything other than a brief mention on their Wikipedia article, which kinda sucks because I'm really interested to know what they sounded like back then. This band had the vocalist, the guitarist, and drummer from Spineshank. That's pretty much all I know. After hearing the album Demanufacture by Fear Factory, the band felt inspired and wanted to take their stuff in a new direction. Hence, in 1996, Spineshank was born. The guitarist from Fear Factory heard a demo from them and liked what they heard. They did a tour with them and eventually got signed with Roadrunner Records, a record company that has worked with a lot of big acts like Korn, Slipknot, Killswitch Engage, and Machine Head. Shortly after that, they released their first record in 1998, Strictly Diesel. This album was a great first record. It's hard-hitting, it's raw, and you can definitely hear some of the industrial influence in their sound. Now, I must say it's not as good as the album to come after it, but that doesn't mean it's bad at all, and I could definitely see why some fans say it's their favorite album by them. I just feel like the album was before Spineshank really found their sound that defined them. But it had some really amazing tracks like Intake, Shinebox, the title track Strictly Diesel, and my personal favorite on the album, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Overall an amazing album, and made any fan at the time want to know what was to come next. The album would be The Height of Callousness. Released in 2000, this album was when the band finally found that sound that defined them. An amazing blend of melodic, heavy, hard-hitting industrial, and the best elements from nu metal are all there. If you're not just a fan of nu metal, but a fan of metal in general, this album is a must-listen. From the fast, heavy first track Asthmatic to Synthetic, one of their best songs of all time, with a kick-ass music video. New Disease, Cyanide 2600, which was featured on the Resident Evil movie soundtrack, another movie with an amazing soundtrack and score done by Marilyn Manson, and of course, there's one of my favorite songs by them of all time, Play God. There is no other way to describe this album other than fucking amazing. If you were looking for a perfect blend of industrial and nu metal, here it is. This isn't just one of my favorite Spineshank albums of all time, it's one of my favorite albums of all time. This album was the shit, and still is the shit. If you've never listened to Spineshank before, I highly recommend starting with this album. Now, you would think it would be difficult to follow up such an amazing album, right? Well, you would be wrong, because in 2003, Spineshank would release another album that was just as good, if not a little better in some aspects, Self-Destructive Pattern. This album was much more melodic than their previous efforts, which I think is a really good thing. This was the height of Spineshank's career, and rightfully so. This album has so many amazing songs like Violent Mood Swings, Smothered, which is also probably one of their best music videos, along with Synthetic from their previous album. My favorite song on the album, Beginning of the End, which I've actually used in a lot of my videos before. Forgotten, which is more of a depressing song, but still amazing nonetheless. The title track, as well as Fallback, were some awesome songs. Now, for some reason in recent interviews, Johnny Santos, the singer of Spineshank, has said he didn't like this album. And I must ask, why not? I understand it's not the same sound they had in their first two albums, but it's still a great album nonetheless. But that's not to say the songs I didn't mention were good, because they damn well are. The entire album was good. Beginning of the End was featured in the beginning of Freddy vs. Jason, and Smothered was nominated for a Grammy, which should have won, by the way, because it was an amazing song. But unfortunately, after this album, it was the beginning of the end for Spineshank, pun intended. In early 2004, 2 weeks after they were nominated for a Grammy, Johnny Santos, the singer of Spineshank, decided to leave. The reasoning was mainly due to differences in what they wanted with the direction of their sound. It was unclear what the future of Spineshank was at this point. As soon as they started to gain some serious traction, it seemed to be all over for them. After Johnny left, he formed a new band called Temper, and they made a demo that's really hard to find. Luckily, someone uploaded it to YouTube back in 2013, and wow, it's really fucking good. It basically picked up where Self-Destructive Pattern left off, and went for an even more melodic sound. Johnny's voice in these demos is probably the best I've ever heard it. Don't get me wrong, it's nowhere near as awesome as Spineshank, but it was still an amazing demo, and it makes me really depressed that the project didn't last long and never saw a full album release. Around the same time Johnny was working with Temper, Spineshank was looking for a new singer. In 2005, they decided to work with Brandon Espinoza. There are demos of this on YouTube, and I gotta say, it's just not good, guys. Brandon sounds like an emo grindcore singer in these damn songs, and the band just doesn't gel with the singing. A huge downgrade from Johnny Santos. During this, Temper broke up and Johnny formed a new band called Silent Civilian. Honestly, I really liked this band, I really do. It was a thrash metal band with some metalcore elements, and I really enjoyed their stuff, mainly their first album released in 2006, Rebirth of the Temple. After 2 years of complete silence from Spineshank, however, in 2007 they announced that Spineshank was breaking up. And thank fucking God for that, because wow, those demos sounded horrible. After Silent Civilian's first album, everyone quit the band, and Johnny had to get a whole new crew and released Ghost Stories. The album is okay, but I feel like the original band sounded a lot better. But hey, that's just my opinion. While Silent Civilian was still together, in 2008, Spineshank announced that they reunited with Johnny, and they said they were working on a new record, and that they wouldn't be abandoning their industrial/melodic sound. If only that were true. In 2012, Spineshank released Anger, Denial, Acceptance. And this album, especially compared to their previous work, just wasn't that good. It wasn't a bad album per se, but it was a bad Spineshank album. To be completely honest, it was basically just a grittier version of Silent Civilian. It didn't really sound like Spineshank at all. Hell, their demos with Brandon Espinoza sounded more like Spineshank than this album. Like, I really tried to get into this album. I really did. But I just couldn't. Don't get me wrong, there's some pretty okay tunes on the album, like After the End, the title track, Murder Suicide, and Exit Wounds, but none of those songs really sound like Spineshank. I still really love this band, but I expect so much more from them. But if you like this album, that's perfectly fine. It's certainly better than a lot of the other metal albums out there. It's just not really my cup of tea, mainly because it's not what I expected it to be. I will give it this though, the title of the album definitely describes my feelings about it. First I was angry that it existed, then I denied that it existed, and now I just accept that it exists. Now lately, nobody has really heard anything from Spineshank. Maybe they'll come out with a new album that will just blow everybody away. Maybe they'll go back to their hard-hitting industrial sound of the height of callousness. Maybe they'll go back to the melodic sound of Self-Destructive Pattern. Who knows? Overall, they're an amazing band, although they've had a bumpy road after 2004, to say the least. Let's just hope they're not out for the count yet, because they've made so many amazing songs, so many amazing albums. I don't want to see this band die.
Update.
So they messaged me back, and apparently they're no longer active as a band, which is basically a nice way of saying they're broken up. There was really no actual update of this on their Facebook wall or anywhere, so that's why I really didn't know, but now I know. So basically, guys, they're not a thing anymore. Maybe they'll get back together someday. I mean, who knows, but probably not. So those albums are pretty much all we have. So there you go. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. More content by me is coming soon.